This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
We welcome you to Real Talk. You know, we've seen some, in our neck of the woods in Western Canada, some cooler weather, some rain, which is amazing news for the incredible crews that have been battling wildfires. But Alberta still trending toward what looks to be its worst wildfire season ever. Its worst wildfire season on record. Earlier this week, heading in, we took a look at the number of active wildfires at 71 when we did our Monday show. That number is knocked down 4 to 67, but that doesn't mean that there aren't communities still threatened. That doesn't mean that the magnitude of these fires isn't something that should, quite frankly, knock our socks off and get us talking about some bigger picture stuff, not just the immediate firefights, not just communities and infrastructures threatened, but the approach that we take as a society to this from a number of different angles. We're going to lead off with this today with a freelance video journalist, a weather specialist, whose footage is going to blow your mind. Kyle Brittain is going to be joining us in just a second. Most of you will be hearing this on the podcast, but I implore you to watch this episode on YouTube. You will not believe the footage that he has been collecting from the front lines. That in just a second. This episode of Real Talk is presented by our friends at Relo. You can find them online at relo.ca. That's R-E-L-O. Have you been thinking about a career in real estate? I know a whole bunch of my friends are. I mean, who hasn't? If you want to find out more about becoming a real estate agent, visit Relo.ca. Why? Well, Relo offers better real estate training, professional expert webinars, entertaining podcasts, and excellent customer service. Relo's content is targeted so that you can meet exam criteria in the quickest amount of time. They're going to help you learn anytime, any place, at your own pace. How great is that? You know, there's no better time to start your real estate career, and there's no better place to do it than Relo.ca. Kyle Brittain's been talking about weather and telling weather stories for a long time. He's an expert on the subject matter. He's a freelance video journalist. All this footage you're about to see is his. He's the former Alberta bureau chief for the Weather Network, and we're grateful to have him joining us this morning on Real Talk. Kyle, thanks a lot for making time for us, and welcome to the show. Where do we find you this morning?
Downtown Calgary.
Oh, it's got to feel good to be back home, at least for just a little bit. Can you describe for us what the last few weeks have been like for you?
Well, once that heat really started, I mean, it was like, if you think about how kind of it seemed like our winter was never ending until late April, and suddenly it got really, really warm at the start of May, and our wildfire season just took right off. So, I mean, I headed up north. It wasn't even that far north. It was kind of southwest of Edmonton, west of Drayton Valley. There was a number of fires that kind of exploded in size, and very wind-driven fires. That was back on May 4th, 5th. And so we went up there and documented those fires at close range, and then it, cooled down for a few days and then took off again. So, I've been out in the field a couple times documenting these fires. And we witnessed some pretty intense stuff.
Did you have, we're talking to people even just over the May long weekend, and sort of this common theme of the conversation is how different this May long felt. You talk to a lot of people that are used to camping. They've been caught in snowstorms before on May long. People have had their fifth wheels stuck because the access roads are so washed out and wet. That's just not been the case this year. Did you see the so-called fire season coming from a mile away? Like, were there warning signs, even months with the snowpack in advance, or weeks in advance with no precipitation?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you say, it was I haven't seen too many May long weekends that were that warm. In fact, it was 20 years ago at this time. I was a high school grad, and we went grad camping that weekend down in Dinosaur, and it was 30 degrees and sunny. Later that summer, we had a lot of bad wildfire activity, as it turns out. I'm not saying there's any specific correlation there, but yeah, like it didn't seem like a normal May long weekend. But Yeah, I mean, it's been really intense out here in Western Canada. I mean, we had the really dry fall, the really dry winter. So, we have this period in spring called the spring dip, where, you have this low foliar moisture content. There's not much sap up in the trees yet. The trees are very dry. And then we had it kind of perfectly coincide with one or two really strong heat wave events, and that obviously led to increased fire behavior, fire danger across Alberta. So yeah, the signs were there. As soon as we saw that heat coming in early May, and then the winds started to pick up with it, it was pretty scary stuff.
We're seeing right now on YouTube, and again, anybody listening on the podcast, you have to check out the visuals of this because they're absolutely astounding. Can you talk to us about the process of gathering this footage? You're an independent video journalist. You head in there. Obviously, you've got some experience. I know we don't want people running into the eye of the storm, so to speak, to try to get their own footage like this, but take us through your process and what this experience must be like.
Well, I have a background as a wildland firefighter. I was on a RAP attack crew in Alberta between it was basically April of 2010 and August of 2014, so, I became accustomed to working near wildland fires during that time. As a storm chaser and as a weather expert, I basically, I'm constantly looking at the meteorology behind these types of events. And so, I basically used my combined skill sets, kind of an unorthodox background, to kind of get out there and document this stuff in real time. And yeah, so I mean, it's not something that you can just do easily. You can't just drive up to a wildfire typically. I mean, often roads are closed, and it makes it makes sense. People should be heading away from these things, and I'm only getting close to them because I feel comfortable to manage certain situations, drawing from experience. Right, there's a lot of things you have to focus on. You're really, your situational awareness is really important. You're looking at everything from, wind direction, wind speed, what type of fuel is around, how close it is to you. And, you're anticipating everything, knowing where the fire is at all times, just so that you can stay safe. And really what I'm doing is going in there and getting close enough that I can kind of bring those visuals, try to capture those visuals and the audio too. I mean, it's just a really sensory experience that's not really commonly seen. You don't see many photos and video of wildfires at close range. And so I'm really trying to capture that and bring it to the public. We've got fires. You can feel the radiant heat off of flames like hundreds of meters away. And that just kind of puts it in perspective where, as a wildland firefighter, you're not on the ground in front of these fires with this type of fire behavior. It's just impossible to get that close to it. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think, wildfire, why can't you just get a fire engine or a bunch of wildland firefighters on the ground putting out the fire? And it's not that simple. When you get into those peak burning conditions, late afternoon, where your flame lengths are 50, 100 feet or more, maybe even double that, you can't get anywhere near those flames on the ground. You're actioning the rear of the fire, and you're also considering, like, some of the footage you're seeing there, there's very light winds around the fire. So it's actually a little bit more manageable to get closer. But when the winds really start to pick up, I mean, the fire may be a little bit more predictable in terms of what direction it's going, but it's just too volatile to really get on the ground and be effectively actioning that fire. And that's why we've seen in May is fire season in Alberta, and we've been seeing sort of an increase in these wildland fires that have been threatening municipalities, even leading to disasters like 2011 Slave Lake, 2016 Fort McMurray. So I mean, this is fire season where we get these wind-driven events when it's really dry out there. And it just really helps to tell the story and put things in perspective, like what does a fire look like up close? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And what are these guys on the ground dealing with? And why is this season so bad? And questions like that.
Well, your reporting's been astounding, and people can check out the show notes or our promotional tweet here to follow you on Twitter and Instagram. I had a chance a couple of times back in my video journalist days to go shoot the pool footage from a chopper, or to go in under escort into some of these fires, not as close as you were, and of course with as much PPE as possible and surrounded by experts. One of the things that I remember is these, I don't know if you'd call them like spontaneous combustion type events, but you'd have trees that would almost just explode explode. Like the trunk would almost explode. They were so hot. And there was this haunting silence as well as a whole lot of noise, depending on what was happening. It's like, people describe these forests almost as like a living, breathing type of entity. I remember, Fort McMurray's fire chief at the time describing that fire, of course, everybody remembers as the beast. Like the fire itself has a bit of a personality. Can you help us understand, and again, I know that you'll point out, because you're an expert, you'll say, well, listen, there's 67 active wildfires right now. That's probably 67 different personalities, right? But as a fire kind of calms down at night or whips up again in the morning, or has the wind or the rain impacted or the temperature in either way, can you describe how that happens, how fires can kind of chill out a little bit and then flare up again?
Yeah, it's really amazing how, fire behavior is directly tied to weather conditions. And so, I mean, you can get certain environments where it's, you have drought conditions ongoing. It's really dry, and it's dry like to a great depth below the forest. These types of fires not only burn really quickly when there's wind, but they can burn really hot and really deep and really intensely. At other times, it's fairly moist below the ground, but the surface is dry, and you get the strong winds, and then that can blow a raging fire across the landscape really quickly. So being directly tied to weather conditions, I mean, typically you're looking for the hot, dry, windy weather. So later in the afternoon, that's when you tend to see that peak in fire behavior. When I was a wildland firefighter, we would usually look at 1700 hours, 5 p.m. for that kind of peak burning period where you would see the most volatile fire behavior. So yeah, I mean, in the morning and the overnight, you get a little bit of that recovery. You get the cooler temperatures, higher humidity that you can actually get in closer to these fires. It's no fun to pull an all-nighter on a fire and fight the fire, but it's kind of critical sometimes to slow these things down. The thing is, of course, you can't get aircraft in the air because most of these aircraft that are fighting fire are flying VFR, visual flight rules. And so, you need to be flying during daylight. And so, it makes it a little tricky to actually get in and stop these things. Like you can't really stop nature. Humans are trying our best to stop nature, but it's really not possible when you have such, like you call it, a beast. I mean, these fires, like a couple different, the two main personalities of fire that I've observed in the last few weeks is, there's the fires that are growing in a hot conditions, but very light winds. And you see these ominous smoke plumes that just vertically billow up in the atmosphere. And sometimes these smoke plumes can grow so tall that they generate their own thunderstorm. They're called pyrocumulonimbus clouds, fire-generated thunderstorms. And these, you can really get a sense of the impact that they have on the surrounding weather, surrounding the fire. You'll literally, starting kind of late afternoon into the early evening, you can see these flames starting to take up these big stands of trees, and the fire itself is like a vacuum. Like you superheat the air over top of those trees that are being incinerated, and you cause like a local area of low pressure, and the air from all around the fire gets sucked into it, and you can feel that standing there, that inflow into the fire, and so you can really get a sense for how these fires, these huge fires, can really impact the surrounding weather in that sense. But then there's the other personality of the fire where you have the strongly wind-driven fires. These ones, you can't get it. Even documenting them from the sidelines, it's pretty tricky. Like you got to be further back because those flames are moving really quickly, and you're tipping with the winds. You're tipping the flames over. You're preheating all the fuels ahead of it. You're transporting what are called firebrands, basically like flaming pine cones and bark, and starting spot fires out like a kilometer or more ahead of these wind-driven fires at times. Kind of like the fire is just this self-sustaining machine, and in this case, the wind is what's pushing that flame front through the trees, and you get what's called a continuous crown fire in cases where you hit like a stand of continuous coniferous trees, and you get the most volatile fire behavior in these types of cases, and these fires can double in size per day or more, right? So, this is the type of fire behavior we're out there witnessing. Winds are obviously the greatest kind of weather variable that influence fire behavior, but you have all kinds of, different kinds of wildfire. But basically, if it's dry and it's hot and, you've got a fire going, it can get pretty intense in that late afternoon, early evening period. before it kind of starts to settle down in the overnight if you get that recovery.
Can we talk about the toll, like the physical toll that it takes? These wildland firefighters, they're not, firefighters, no matter where they are, whether they're urban centers or way out in the boreal forest, it's obviously hard work. But these are men and women that are like, in a lot of circumstances, hiking, right? Like with gear on their back. They're literally using axes and shovels and digging trenches. I mean, this is incredibly strenuous and very dangerous work.
Yeah, there's no question. It's a highly demanding, physically, mentally demanding job. I mean, that they really screen for that when you're training to become a wildland firefighter. You know, they're checking to make sure that you're ready for it. You're up to the challenge. You know, you've got very kind of vigorous fitness testing standards that you have to, there's a kind of a standard fitness test. And depending on the fire crew you're on, you know, they may have different kind of levels of, you know, whatever certain tests are a little bit harder than others, depending on what kind of firefighting you're doing. But it's in general, I mean, it's very, very demanding, and they're long days, and you're in the smoke, you're in the mud, you know, like I say, you're not right up against these huge flames. You're kind of working up the perimeter of the fire. You're, you know, like say in a typical initial attack fire where you're going in and it's just like you've just gotten a dispatch, someone has spotted a smoke, the fire's just starting, you're trying to contain it before it gets out of control. You know, you're flying in, and as a fire crew, you're orbiting around looking for your water sources where you can set up a pump and a hose lay into the fire. And it's really, you know, figuring out your strategy and your tactics in advance. And then it's, you know, finding your escape routes to your safety zones and your anchor points and everything. So you're kind of like, you know, you're scouting all that out from the air, if possible. That was more of a thing with RAP attack and hell attack. But yeah, once you get on the ground, then it's you know, all hands on deck, and you know, getting that hose lay out, getting the chainsaws out, getting the Pulaskis. Those are those digging axes, and you're starting to work that fire flank as best as possible. You know, you're putting the bucket on the helicopter, and you know, he's going to go fly off to maybe a more distant, more abundant water source, fill the bucket, come, and then kind of manage the larger flames while you're kind of setting up your system on the ground to kind of get safely close to the fire. And of course, these really big fires that we have, like thousands of people from Alberta, out of province, out of country, military, even locals helping out. You know, everyone's kind of helping out in the way that they best possibly can, you know, without getting into a dangerous proximity to this volatile fire behavior. It's very tiring work. It's, you know, like I say, it's very, very dirty, very, very demanding physically. You know, that's why they try to simulate it in the fitness test, where you have to carry, you know, a pump on your back or boxes of hose on your back and walk up and down ramps and things. Yeah. So you're trying to simulate if you can handle that kind of, you know, vigor. So
yeah, and I'm not even like, that's not even like one step in the wrong direction, you snap your femur. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like every single step, and then we're not even paying attention right now in this conversation. I mean, like some of your footage, if people have seen it, there's like it's I mean, the layers of your storytelling are fascinating. You see these like little bunnies like running around and scrambling across the access roads and things like that in our live chat. You know, I knew it. I could see it coming, of course. As soon as people see the bunnies, they go, ah, and people are thinking about the wildlife and the implications there. Some people are talking about, you know, their friends who have a stable plan, like for their horses, for their livestock. Yep. They're spray painting the horse's ass, quite frankly, to hope that they'll get to see their horses back. I mean, people are being faced with extremely difficult decisions to make, thousands of Albertans displaced. I mean, it just really, the human side of this as well, the human side of the storytelling, some of it just devastating. I mean, people losing their entire homes, losing everything. I saw a report, I haven't seen it confirmed yet, an 18-year-old Edmonton man reportedly says his family, an asthmatic, died yesterday from wildfire smoke in the city. I mean, you know, this is becoming the type of situation that, you know, you're not insulated. If you live in an urban area, you know, thanks to some, you know, reporting like yours, it allows us to better understand the impact in these rural areas, these forest areas. But it's not lost on me that this is something, an issue that is becoming more and more and more relevant to every single Canadian every single year.
Yeah, the human impact is obviously huge. I mean, wildland fires have been happening on the landscape for hundreds of millions of years. These fires are good for the boreal forest and for certain forest regions have adapted to wildfire, periodic episodes of fire that kind of, clear out the dead organic material on the forest floor. They open up the forest to sunlight to kind of restart the whole process and regenerate life on the Earth's surface. But humans came along, and we've got to learn how to live in these wildland environments. We had a number of decades in certain jurisdictions where our approach was basically just to put every single fire out, and these fires needed to burn, but we had assets to protect that we built into the forest. I mean, to consider northern Alberta, for example, you've got a lot of communities that are basically islands surrounded by boreal forest, which effectively becomes fuel at certain times of the year. And of course, you have the traumatic memory of recent disasters happening in northern Alberta in these cases as well. We've got these fire crews, when you have these really big kind of fire flaps that happen, we call it a fire flap if it's just like a whole bunch of fires, really fast moving, quickly growing fires occur all at once. How do you manage prioritizing your resources? Like, of course, you're going to prioritize human life, communities, watersheds and soils, infrastructure, natural resources. And so, you're trying to figure out where do we, and it's a dynamic situation, right? Like, where do we send our manpower, so to speak, now to go, deal with this situation? Pivot. We got another fire that started just upwind of Slave Lake, for example. We got to send you over there now. And so, being evacuated is obviously a traumatic thing, and you don't always have real-time information. What's happened to my home? You're displaced, you're not at home. It's the last place you want to be when you're dealing with, mental stress like that, right? So, these wildfires, like I say, they're a natural process, but because of our, say, wildland fire management practices in certain jurisdictions have put all the fires out, now these forests are loaded with potential fuel, and we're building more and more into the forest, so we're increasing our chances of negative interactions with wildfire. And of course, we are seeing change due to climate change in northern Alberta. Of these wildland fires that we're seeing longer, hotter fire seasons since the early 60s. We've been seeing more lightning generated fires, more area burned, and we've been seeing more negative interactions in these wildland urban interface areas due to these wildfires. So, I mean, this is the way of the future. We have to learn to adapt. These communities that are surrounded, good fire smarting practices are important. And then, it goes beyond that. It goes to we've been seeing horrific air quality in Alberta's major cities and beyond. I mean, it's been across the United States, this smoke from Alberta, northern Saskatchewan, northeast BC, this giant reservoir of smoke. It's been spreading far, far beyond. Even if you're not anywhere near a fire, you're still going to be dealing with the impacts of these fires, the smoke, the toxic air, and we have to learn how to manage that safely.
Can I ask, I want to make sure, I don't want to embarrass myself here and misinterpret the data, but if I'm reading this fire data correctly, this is remarkable. So in 2022, last summer, Alberta recorded 1,259 wildfires. That was just above the 5-year average of just over 1,100. So 1,259 fires with 159,000 hectares burned. That was below the 5-year average of 190,000 hectares burned. I understand there's a lot of numbers here. But last year, 1,259 fires till the end of the season with 159,000 hectares burned. We're not even out of May. We're at 521 fires at 1 million hectares burned. So before we're even out of May, we've already seen 5 times the area burned as compared to last year's entire summer. Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah, and it depends on the year. Like, some years you'll have a high number of fires that don't burn as much. Like, it depends on, like, this year, the reason why we had so much burning so early is because we have these, like, basically drought conditions leading into this season. So the fuel is primed. It does not take much to get the fire to progress through this type of fuel. Certain years it's wetter, and so you need a stronger wind if you want to burn more forest. Or this year we're very dry, and especially that spring dip period earlier in May before the green up happened. That was what really started this whole thing. Was early May, during that spring dip, extremely dry. Green up hadn't happened yet. We had that first heat wave, really kind of primed the fuels for fire, and then we had that big wind event, and that wind event is what drove the initial outbreak of wildland fires that grew to massive sizes, and now you have active fire line everywhere. And so, okay, so now we've got these fires established. Now we're going to turn the heat up again, and we're going to give you another anomalously strong upper level ridge of high pressure, which means sinking air on the large scale, more hot temperatures, even without the wind. Now you've got all this fire line already established and burning across the province. So now it's kind of just like, you can't, it's kind of like you've set off sort of like a feedback loop now, where it's really hard to kind of get, we really need help from Mother Nature to get a grip on this situation, because it's off to the races now. That being said, we had a very good rain event across much of the Boreal, not the far north. So the Long Lake fire near high level, and up the Fox Lake fire up in far northern Alberta, these have been still burning, and we expect them to continue to burn. But we had some really good rain, and that's what's going to really help fire crews get in. Now they'll be able to get right in on those fire lines and start to take out those areas that would have been too hazardous to approach before. But we've still, like you said, I mean, if you've got 1 million hectares burnt and you've got 20 active wildfires, 20 out of control fires, there's still a lot of fire line out there that could potentially flare up if it gets hot and dry again. So we really need help from Mother Nature on this one, because otherwise it's kind of like, yeah, you're set up for some hard times. But the thing is like Alberta's wildfire season, like I say, tied to that spring dip in the early part of the summer, or like May, basically. We tend to see our seasonal rains come late May, June, and that tends to shut down the season in northern Alberta. The British Columbia Northwest States season starts to pick up in that July-August frame. But if we have a strange year where that heat continues and it stays dry up north, we could see these fires burning all summer. And yeah, I mean, it's incredible. The numbers already being over 1 million hectares. We're not out of May. If we see the seasonal rains come now, we would probably end up still being near a record-breaking season in terms of area burned. But I mean, if things get hot and dry again, yeah, I can't even imagine where we might end up. We've got a number of months ahead of us. And I must just say, though, everyone who's out there is doing such a fantastic job. Unfortunately, we've lost structures in many areas of northern Alberta. But still, I mean, if you think about the amount of fires on the landscape, the amount of hands on deck that are here helping out, they're doing a great job with the resources that they have. It just, if you get in close to these fires and you see what it's like in real time, and then you look at what's been happening, these fires that have been threatening so many municipalities like Fox Creek and Valley View and Swan Hills and Wildwood and Drayton Valley, you think about what could have happened. They've been doing a great job of trying to keep these away from municipalities given the circumstances.
It's really absolutely remarkable, as is your reporting, Kyle, and your command of the subject matter. We're so grateful to have had you joining us today. It's been quite frankly bizarre to be trying and doing our best to cover parallel stories this Alberta wildfire season, which is trending to be the most significant wildfire season in Alberta's recorded history, as well as an election. And to be honest, I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen climate change and the wildfire reality reflected more in some of the campaign conversations. We're going to go there tomorrow on Real Talk. I'm sure you don't want to start wrangling with the politics of all this, but I really appreciate your availability. We appreciate what you're doing. We have a hell of a respect, not just for your skill, but also for doing it independently. It's amazing, and we're grateful to have your voice here on Real Talk. Thanks for making time for us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, you got it. You can follow Kyle Brittain on Twitter and on Instagram. And we want to thank our Real Talk patrons for supporting this interview. This interview was made possible by our Real Talk patrons, and we appreciate those of you who do support the show, allow us to broaden our focus and the depth of our storytelling, the quality of our storytelling, and to support independent journalism by supporting Real Talk on a monthly basis. You can learn more about doing that checking out the Connect link on our website, ryanjesperson.com. Were you keeping an eye on our live chat through this? We've had like Randy Thunderhorse is in there talking about his personal experience as a wildland firefighter. Mm-hmm. They're talking about folks being conscripted to go fight fires.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Sharon said she's seen that before in small towns. So literally people are walking into like watering holes into like pubs and being like, everybody let's go. And if you don't, threats of arrest. It was pretty serious stuff.
And that video, oh my gosh, like my partner Jatinder, she's so scared about this right now, even though we're in we're not in the downtown core, but we're in the city. So, most of us think we're pretty safe, but it's when you see video like this in high quality and pictures, it really brings home like how dangerous things are right now. And those numbers you were rifling off, I couldn't believe so.
Okay. So nobody, I always think like a hectare. Well, what is a hectare? There's 2.5 CFL football fields in a hectare. So,
huge.
So, 2.5 million football fields.
That's
if that helps people kind of wrap their minds around it. 2.5 million football fields have burned to this point, which is really wild. I also noted there was a comment in here that I wanted to touch on. I think it was from Sharon. I appreciate it. She said something along the lines of, controlled burns are a good thing, right? Like, scheduled controlled burns. I wish I had her exact words in front of me, but it reminded me of an interview that we had. It was back on August 3rd of 2021. And you can find it, of course, on our YouTube channel, or you can go check it out in our podcast archive. That's when we spoke to Dr. Amy Cardinal Christensen about Indigenous fire stewardship and how present-day fire scientists and fire management personnel are tapping into thousands of years of expertise on how to manage the land and how to ensure that those so-called controlled burns can actually help the land and ultimately protect communities. Wildfire, you never want to hear this if your home has been affected, obviously, or if you're evacuated and you're dealing with those inconveniences and quite frankly, the fear, the uncertainty, the stress that can come along with that. But bigger picture, though it sounds weird to say, wildfire is a good and natural thing. It's a thing that happens in the forest. The fact of the matter is, with human activity and expansion and infrastructure, a lot of times we've neglected some of those principles that have allowed communities, and in many cases First Nations, to sustain these relationships with the forest for thousands of years. So again, that's August 3rd of 2021. That was our conversation with fire scientist Dr. Amy Cardinal Christensen. Talking about fire, this is the business of our friends at Complete Care Restoration. They've been helping people get back on their feet in some of those communities that Kyle mentioned by name, Slave Lake, Fort McMurray. Complete Care has been there helping people get their lives back, recovering from fire damage. They've done the same in southern Alberta, communities that have been dealing with flood damage. Of course, they also help you bounce back from things like mold and asbestos removal. They have teams experienced in this type of thing. You don't want to mess around with this stuff. We've seen the Complete Care Restoration team at work, and based on our observations, we recommend them with 2 thumbs up. If you have a construction, a renovation project coming up, Complete Care does that as well. You can find them online at completecarerestoration.ca. If this summer for you is going to mark a new beginning, if you're looking at maybe bettering yourself or setting yourself up for success in a new and exciting but competitive job market, check out Canada's Open University today. Athabasca University is the choice of tens of thousands of Canadians. Number one, because their world-class accredited online programs and courses offer flexibility to learn at your own pace on a schedule that suits your lifestyle. So whether it's an undergrad, a graduate, or even a PhD program that you're looking at, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of options. You'll find that perfect fit when you check out Athabasca University at athabascau.ca. How cool to hear from our friends at Apex Automation. We offer them our congratulations. They're expanding, opening a new field office in Houston, Texas. The coolest part about it is that it was team members of theirs that, while they let the company know they didn't want to go anywhere, they're happy working for Apex, but they were looking for new professional opportunities. They wanted to go live in Texas. So the team at Apex, because, they're putting people ahead of profits all the time, said, yeah, we can work with that. So they're expanding down to the Lone Star State. Apex is hiring right now. They're constantly looking for Canada's best electrical, instrumentation, computer science, process, and mechanical engineers, plus electricians and instrument technicians. If you're looking for a great new opportunity, at a place that's one of Canada's fastest growing automation firms. Make sure you check out apexautomation.ca today. And you know who else is hiring? It's our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy. If you want to be part of Canada's green revolution, if you want to help municipalities, provinces, and this entire country meet sustainability goals, you're going to want to check out kubienergy.ca today. You can learn more about what they're doing in home and commercial solar, energy storage, EV chargers, even off-grid solar. Some really cool stuff happening with Canada's busiest solar installer. This is Kubi Renewable Energy. You can find more about what they're doing online at kubienergy.ca. Of course, as we talk about fires, as we pay attention to the stories making news all around us, this Alberta election continues on uninterrupted. Sure, some door-knocking efforts may have been delayed due to that wildfire smoke, but it's not lost on anybody that we're just days away from finding out who's going to be Alberta's next premier and who will form government. Will it be Rachel Notley and the NDP? Will it be Danielle Smith and the UCP? Unbelievable to see the numbers reported yesterday. I've seen some reports that more than 210,000 Albertans cast an advance ballot yesterday when they opened. To put that into perspective, if we see 1.5 million Albertans vote total, that'll be significant. Mm-hmm. To have 200,000 on day one of advance ballots.
Yeah, I heard today it's
that's
a record.
A big deal.
It's a record that broke the record from the last election. So, yeah.
I'm curious to know what our next guest will make of that. This guy's been around politics for a long time. First elected to municipal council in Vulcan County, get this, when he was 19 years old. Served 16 years on council there, and he was elected MLA in the Little Bow riding in 2012. Served through 2015. He's been a grain farmer for 30 years. He's the proud granddad to 5 grandkids, and those who know him say that he's most proud of serving as arm candy for his wife and fellow entrepreneur, Serena. It's a real pleasure to welcome Ian Donovan back to the show. It's nice to see your face, pal. How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good, buddy. That is a hell of a beard you've got going on right now. I love that. I have not seen this beard is news to me. I've seen you in the goatee, but not this. I like it.
Thanks. Yeah, a little change up over the years. And when COVID started, we had the food bank in Vulcan did a fundraiser, and I put it out there on Twitter. If, 100 people put in $50, I'd shave my head, and well, more than that came through. So it was a good fundraiser, and yeah, I've just kept it off, and yeah, it is what it is.
There you go. Well, hey, I think it's a good look, and I'm looking forward to catching up. You and I were just going to kind of treat this like we're having a beer together, and just kind of shoot the shit a little bit. What do you make of over 200,000 advance ballots cast in one day? I mean, that's a big deal. What does a motivated electorate say to you? What does your crystal ball tell you?
Hey, I've lost 2 elections and won 1 election, so my crystal ball isn't always as good as it used to be at one time. But it's good when people get out to vote. That just shows people are active and want to know what's going on in politics. So, we live in democracy, whether we're happy federally or provincially of whoever's in charge or not in power at the time or might be in power next. We still have that right to vote in Alberta and in Canada. And I think we need to always look back and be thankful for that, because there's a lot of places in the world we don't have that. So, but it means voters are very motivated when they come out early. So I think that's a good sign. I don't know which way that leans, but hey, I'm just an old farmer who knows what I know.
Yeah, well, hey, who knows what anybody knows, pal? Honestly, you talk to any pundit right now, you talk to any pollster right now, and I've sat on quite a few election panels over the last 8 weeks or so. Nobody wants to go on the record with a prediction. I had my back against the wall, and one was squeezed out of me about a month ago, and I said, all right, if I have to go on the record, I think it's going to be a nail biter, but I do think that Danielle Smith and the Conservatives are going to pull this one out. But we're seeing now people going, well, this could be like 44-43. This could, some people saying 42-41, and maybe Jordan Wilkie, based on circumstances, the Green Party leader, squeezes one out, and maybe the Alberta Greens get a seat. I guess they've got some pretty interesting internal polling. We'll be talking to him tomorrow about that. The last two elections, as if I need to tell you, Ian, have been pretty dramatic. Like 2019, the United Conservatives become the first political party in Alberta's history to get 1 million votes, right? The election before that, 2015, the Orange Crush election. I mean, the last two have been huge stories. How do you see this one as different than maybe 2012 when you got your seat, 2015 with Notley, and 2019 with Kenny?
Again, I think we're almost turned into a two political party system in Alberta. It seems like which, I mean, I always say people need choice. I'm a fan myself of consensus government, where we could actually get rid of the whole party system and throw all the money that we put into parties towards food banks, homeless shelters, stuff like that we actually need. There's other provincial parties that do it, but again, we're not there in this province, and I don't know if we'll ever get there. So let's face with what we have here. We have basically a two-party system, and I mean, the voters are always right. I lost a provincial election by 8-10 votes one time. That's life. I mean, it's again, the fact that people get out and vote, I think, is really what we need to look at, because it shows what the issues are today. And I think most people I talk to, it's the affordability right now is huge. I mean, people are in challenges. So
would you say, is that the number one, it depends on who you talk to, right? Some people are saying, well, this election's about leadership. I talked to some business leaders yesterday. All this election is about, to the gentleman I was talking about, is the economy, right? You talk to other people, this election's going to be, what are the United Conservatives promising down in Calgary? Everybody's got their own perspective. What do you hear, like in your neck of the woods? Is it people talking about affordability? Is that the number one thing, or are you hearing some other themes come up?
Oh, well, I think affordability is huge, and it's trust in leadership. And the other side is economically, what is Alberta going to do? Because we are the economic powerhouse of Canada, in my opinion, anyways. So we've got to make sure our policies are in place to continue to make Alberta a vibrant place to live. So I think we're on that trajectory right now. I think healthcare is another huge issue. In saying that, some of those numbers, rural ambulance numbers, stuff like that, on wait times have all got better. So I think things are going in a good direction overall, in my opinion. So
you've got a really interesting perspective and a pretty unique perspective, having served as an MLA under then Wildrose Party leader Danielle Smith. I want to pick your brain a little bit about the floor crossing. This was I think November 27th, right, of 2014. You and your colleague Carrie Toll out of Innisfail, Sylvan Lake crossed the floor, the two of you, over to the Jim Prentice Progressive Conservatives. On that day, Danielle Smith said there will be no more Wildrose Party floor crossings. There will be no more. And then about 3 weeks later, on December 14th, Danielle Smith, Rob Anderson, and 7 others crossed over to join the PCs. And everybody knows what happened from there. How would you compare 2012, 2014, Danielle Smith, to what you see from the United Conservative Party leader, Danielle Smith, 10 years later?
Well, I think like a lot of things, I mean, we thought we were doing something right, or I mean, I did. And I mean, hey, obviously everybody wanted to hang out with me, so they came a month later. So, but no, in all honesty, Ryan, that at the end of the day, Danielle, what I give her kudos points for is, like, why would you put yourself back out into this platform? Everybody, it's a blood sport anymore, unfortunately. And I was always that guy to agree to disagree, but try to do it respectfully. Man, I had a lot of hair back then.
You did have a lot of hair back then, pal.
You can see it was starting to get thin though too. But anyhow, I think, I mean, Danielle's, she ran a talk show. I mean, you know what that's like. You go out and you talk, you're trying to bring in conversation. You're trying to make people think about different sides of stuff. So I think, in all honesty, Danielle doing the talk show was great because I think she really learned lots on both sides. She's very smart. Does a lot of homework before she talks about things. So, what I really give her is that's a pretty big piece of humble pie to cross over as the official leader of the opposition, then lose your nomination in 2015. So you didn't even get to run in the 2015 election. And then, kind of go under the wayside for a bit, and then get back in on the talk show side. Now, I guess what I really appreciate of Danielle is that, she open to listening to lots of different things. And I think, that's probably one of the things that I'm impressed with is that she put her name back out there and she rallied. I mean, it's a political story of probably the century, in all honesty, to if you follow through the whole process, to be able to come back and become the premier. And honestly, I mean, the UCP were in trouble before Kenny got ousted. Their polls were brutal. There was no hope. Win, lose, or draw, I hope she wins myself. I think there's a little more economic advantage from the people I talk to and different stuff that feel a little more comfortable with that, with a UCP government in place. But again, if it's tight, there's nothing wrong with that either. The best governments have best opposition. So I think, Rachel Notley would be great in opposition. And I think my personal opinion is have Danielle as a premier and give her a full shot of it under the mandate of the province, not just as the leader of the party that got elected in October and move forward. So.
Let me ask you on the flip side, for your analysis. I mean, Rachel Notley's, I think off the top of my head, I'm doing math, which is always a dangerous place to go. But I think Notley's been in the legislature 14 years, if I remember correctly. Anyway, point is, you saw her in opposition. You saw her in humble opposition. Like, I remember when it was like her, Darren Billis, Brian Mason,
Dave
Egan. Yeah, they had 4. Yeah. They went from 4 to 54. How would you compare Rachel Notley in 2012, 2013 to Rachel Notley of 10 years later? Obviously, she had 4 years as premier, which does a lot. The party is obviously a lot more serious than it was even when it was elected in 2015. I mean, no disrespect, but they were caught on their heels a little bit there. How would you analyze her evolution?
Oh, there's great people in politics. Unfortunately, politics as I say, has become such a blood sport. I always go back to, I don't like the personal attacks when people pull up that stuff. So I think either, Rachel has some great qualities. She's more to the left. I'm more to the right. So we see things a little different, but again, we can agree to disagree respectfully on those things. I think we've got some very strong leadership people there. It's a matter of what vision going forward. I guess my big one with Danielle that I see is, she got in her leadership run for the leadership of the UCP. They had a news conference against her. And to take that in perspective, when she won, she actually opened up her caucus to the former candidates for the leadership and said, hey, come be part of my team. We might not agree on everything, but I want your input on this, and I agree on some of your stuff. So that's a pretty big person, in my opinion, because that's very humbling to be able to extend the olive branch back out and work with people. And I think that shows that you're there for the good of the province, not just for your own personal well-being, so to speak. So, and I think that when she put her name forward to run for leadership, I was like, wow, that's like, she was a talk show host. Everything that ever comes out is just thrown back at her of conversation points. And so, as a good talk show host, you have to look at both sides of the coin. So I was a little disappointed when the NDP kind of went into pull a sound clip from 3 years ago or 5 years ago of whatever she's talked about, because that could be done on anybody on a previous job that they've had. So
I think especially especially for a talk show host, because your job is to push buttons, and sometimes 100%. Quite frankly, people might not like to hear this, but to take positions that you don't 100% have conviction in. What's been interesting is to see Danielle back some of those positions now and have to walk back some other ones. I mean, healthcare funding is a huge one. She's having to say right now, listen, you're not going to have to pay to go see a family doctor. And people are going, well, what about this time when you said that you think that people should? That's a tough one. I'll tell you right now, if I were ever to seek political office, I already know which clips they would use against me. I have them crystal clear, pal, in high fidelity. I have one talking about how the very first thing I would do is implement a sales tax in Alberta. So I guarantee my political career would last about 5 minutes if people were to use my background audio. Do you think, though, that the character quality, and here there's some sort of irony here, that Danielle Smith's willingness to entertain ideas with almost anybody, to talk to almost anybody, could be her Achilles heel? Like, when most people hear this, it'll be Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening into Thursday. We're already going to have seen, and I roll my eyes a little bit, the news conference on the steps of the Alberta legislature. Hate preacher Artur Pawlowski is going to be holding a conference. He says he's going to blow the doors off and tell the truth about his dealings with Alberta Premier UCP leader Danielle Smith. He's going after again. People are going, what the hell is she doing talking to this guy? It's a bad look. She's the party. The momentum, the conservative movement in Alberta is kind of trying to shake that, because I think it could hold them back in the so-called progressive or mainstream voter circles. How do you reconcile that? The what you might characterize to be a positive character quality of being open-minded, but the political ramifications, which can be not so good.
And that's the problem. I mean, it's in that position. I mean, it's a high-pressure position to be the premier. I mean, I've never been in it, but I've watched from the sidelines, and it's a tough job. So whoever you've talked to, everything comes out. Everybody seems to have a reason to try to have a gotcha moment. And unfortunately, it looks, there was some of that, but I think the fact that she picks herself out of the dust, dusts herself off, gets herself off the ground, and she does it, and she keeps going forward. So again, to me, that's kind of leadership and the positive side. I mean, and Rachel Notley being 14 years in as an MLA, some of that as a term as a premier, you can't take that away. I think probably one of the best things was when Danielle wasn't in politics. You go back, you get dome disease. When you live in Edmonton, or when you work in the legislature, you think everything really revolves around what we do in the legislature, and it doesn't, in all honesty. 99% of people aren't following everything, because it can be a little bit painful unless you're a real political nerd on that. So, to me, the fact that she left politics for a while, she got to see some stuff, and she got to talk with lots of people and see some different views. I'm one right from, in 2012, if you would have said cannabis, you can ask any of my colleagues that I was an MLA with in the Wildrose. I mean, I was the absolutely no way we should ever have recreational drugs, and cannabis was bad, because that's how I was raised. Spinning it forward, 11 years later, my wife and I had a cannabis boutique hotel, a grow, a packaging processing facility, and a retail store in cannabis. On the medical side was where my wife had started on it. So again, people's views changed. I think if nothing else, COVID really opened up some eyes both ways, and that can go down whatever rabbit trail you want with it. But at the end of the day, I think people, as we get older, we get more mature. We were a young group of people in the Wildrose in 2012, and we were kind of the cowboys of it, so to speak. Not all of my colleagues, but some of us were. And, I give her, I think she's grown a lot and in taking different jobs and seeing different positions and being a lobbyist, or, working for some different companies on forwarding what she wanted to see. Now, again, probably never having thought, and I know because I talked to Danielle, my boys were in Air Cadets, the 187th Squadron, and Danielle's husband, Dave Moretto, was one of the leaders of that. And this is after we were all out of politics. I mean, and I'll take my shortcomings. I had my mouth engages before my brain thinks about it sometimes, and that's caused me time, pressure, and I'll wear what I have. But the one thing I give Danielle kudos for is just a person is when we go to Air Cadets, and she'd be there the odd time to see Dave or whatever, if there's a fundraiser, and she always took the high road. And I thought, that speaks highly of somebody, of their character. And, for me, that was a pretty big step for her and for me both. But the fact that she was like, hey, she's like, I don't ever see me get back in politics. I really like talk radio. It's been good. But we don't know what we're going to do in 5 years or 7 years or 10 years from now. So, again, to me, the fact that she let her name stand and she went out and rallied. I mean, that's the biggest rally in politics ever, to come back and become the leader and the premier, and pulling the polling numbers from where she had them from when previous Premier Kenny was in to now. I mean, it's hard to argue. That's like the Toronto Maple Leafs win the cup.
Oh, let's not get ridiculous here. Let's not get ridiculous. All right. We already know the Toronto Maple Leafs are not anywhere close to winning the Stanley Cup. By the way, it's been 5 minutes since you said it, but I don't want you to think that I missed your spinning it forward. Let's talk about cannabis. That was a nice play there, Ian. And I want to ask you about that in just a second. But and leadership races can do this, right? They can infuse optimism back into a political party. They can sell memberships. They can raise money, tons of money. They can raise awareness. That's kind of part of the point of leadership races. It's what they were trying to do with the Alberta Party back in 2018-19, a leadership race, infuse energy into it. Had the Conservatives not seen those polling numbers turn around, what do you think the future of conservatism or conservative options could have looked like in Alberta? Is it fair to say, do you think that the UCP is more, ironically, if you look at the way that the floor crossing went, the Wildrose moving over to the PCs, the UCP is, would you say, more of a Wildrose vibe than a PC vibe? What's your assessment right now, today?
I think the media spins that as much as anything, and I'm not trashing on mainstream.
No, speak freely.
But it definitely pushes that way. But I think when you talk with people, it's a pretty balanced approach. And yeah, and you're going to have difference between rural and urban. It's always been a split. It's a little bit of a different mindset on different things and how people perceive things or want things to be done. So that becomes a very big juggling act. And again, that's where I think Danielle did a good job of trying to pull everybody in under the big tent. And it's a challenge. It's like herding butterflies. I mean, I was one of the butterflies. I mean, I'm that guy that likes to do my thing, and to be a team player can be a challenge for some folks for sure. And you can ask any of my former colleagues, but I always like to talk with everybody. I was always that guy and I caused my party some angst because I've talked with everybody on all sides of the floor. I mean, I've talked with the NDP, Premier Notley when she was before she was premier, and Dave Egan and everybody else there. And I mean, it was it's agree to disagree respectfully inside the legislature and try not to make things personal. And I think that's the big thing, is that most people are there for the right reasons, for making Alberta better. And I truly feel that about our premier right now, Premier Danielle Smith, that she is there trying to make a difference, because why else would you pull yourself out and just literally put yourself out there just to have, literally shit thrown at you every day and a quote from when you're on a radio or this or that? I mean, so to me, that shows that you're there for the right reasons, in all honesty.
Before I let you go, are you an official partner with your wife Serena in the cannabis business? Can I ask you a little bit about that, or are you more just like, her like biggest supporter kind of idea?
I like to be the biggest supporter, yeah. Okay. And I do a little quality control checks on our product.
That's very important as well. Quality control. Actually, John and I would like to volunteer to be quality control.
I'll put a shameless plug in for go pick up any Because You Can products at any of the stores.
Yeah, well, can I ask you? So you've got Mary Jane Manor. Your wife does. It's her business. Mary Jane Manor, which is kind of like it's like a micro cannabis facility. It's like a cannabis themed retreat. Is that right? About an hour southeast of Calgary.
Yeah. So on that, Ryan, we ran that. We ran a couple weddings through it. We had some retreats. It was going good. It's again back to a very conservative area we live in.
Right.
You can imagine in small town Mossley, when you open up a hotel and say, "I don't know, we're making it cannabis friendly, adult only," to fit in with all the rules and regulations with AGLC. And it was good. We did that for a while, and then we've kind of taken a little shift in our family here and focusing more on trying to do more stuff with our family and our kids, because we both ran very a lot of things. So the Mary Jane Manor actually just closed on May 1st.
Pardon me.
And what happened is a local business, Shootin' and Sons Feed Yard, which is a large feedlot out here that just expanded again, needed some housing. So we took the opportunity to pivot out of that business. They bought the hotel, and we're running our dispensary until the middle of July when a license renews on it, and then we're going to shut that down. And we've rented our grow out to another group, and we want to travel and do some more stuff with our grandkids and stuff.
Nice.
My father-in-law had a little health scare here last September, and you reassess a lot, I guess, on where you're at and what you're doing. So we're reassessing back and focusing back on some family time and being able to do some stuff like that. But in saying that, my wife, she's on Mount Royal advisory board for the cannabis program. She's still very active in it, but we've just taken a step back. It's she's been 4 years, 7 days a week, and as the trophy husband, I had to, I've been very supportive the best I can, but in saying that, we're so we blazed into that business a bit, and my wife has really been a leader in that. But we're pardon the pun with the blaze.
Yeah, no, I know it's not. I know what's going on.
You like where I go with that, but anyhow,
yeah.
For us, it's been a change, and we've enjoyed it, but we're stepping back a little bit right now and gonna try to focus on doing some family stuff. If nothing else, we figured out that you only go around once, so let's try to maximize that the best we can. We have 5 grandkids now too, so that's a lot of fun. I mean,
you're all grows up, buddy. You're all grows up. Look at you now. Hey, renting out the grain farm, time with the grandkids. Picking your
midlife
spots.
Crisis,
I love it.
I think they call it. I don't know.
No, I don't know. It doesn't sound like much of a crisis to me. It sounds like some pretty good decisions there. Traveling, time with family. People can follow your wife, Serena, on Twitter. I love her handle, Canna Nana, which is great. And we'll have to get her on the show. Cannabis has been a tough slog. I say this with some personal and informed knowledge as well. We've got a family business, and it's not been easy for people in the legal, regulated cannabis market. So I'd love to get Serena on a panel.
Back to regulations provincially. There's lots of things to change. I mean, you've been in the game. It's, you do the criminal background checks, you do all that. Like we need some policy changes on some things to, if you're going to legalize something and make it available, let's make the game level between alcohol and cannabis, because it's not right now. It's very lopsided that cannabis is very expensive. And it's all the background checks and everything. And we've got nothing to hide. It never bothers me, but the fact you gotta, somebody goes through everything you're doing. I mean, if you went to any business that, hey, we want 3 years worth of your books, and any companies have been involved in, and your kids' birthdays, and what do they do? Again, these are policy things that need to be changed in Alberta, but we all know policy, you can't, the people are enforcing it's not their fault. They're just doing their jobs. So again, but positive side, it's no place to go but up on it. So I think there's a lot of positives that way.
I love looking back, Ian. And, 10 years ago, if you would have told me that you and I would be talking about pot on my independent live streaming YouTube talk show, I wouldn't have seen it coming. It's nice to see your smiling face again, and I really appreciate your insights on this. We're trying to go all over the province and get different people's take on what's going to go down on May 29th. Thanks for joining us here on Real Talk.
You bet. Thank you for your time, Ryan.
Yeah,
Take care.
You bet. That's former Wildrose Party MLA turned PC MLA, Ian Donovan. You can let us know what you thought about this conversation by sending us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I just saw a note here on the live chat. This is from Ben, who says, legalized cannabis is one of the issues I've moved more toward the middle on over the last decade, says Ben. You're an adult. You do you. That from Ben. I think a lot of people have changed their minds. And some people are still steadfast in how they've felt about it all the time, which is cool too.
I feel like just that sentence you just said relates to everything. Yeah. If you're an adult and you're not hurting anyone, man, just do you.
You do you. I love it. Every Wednesday, we have a chance to, I find like everything is a cannabis pun now. He was like, we're going to spin it over here and we're going to, blazing a trail. And now I'm sort of about to start talking about heading out to the mountains and exploring Jasper. And I feel like there's just a smorgasbord of segue opportunities. But, it's fresh air you're looking to fill your lungs with. You're not going to find it any better than in Jasper National Park. Now, of course, our friends at Tourism Jasper and in the Jasper town site are well aware and want you to know that they're keeping a keen and continuing eye on wildfire conditions across the province. And a great resource, by the way, this is MyJasper Memories. It's our tradition every Wednesday. There's great resources for you online, including on their website, jasper.travel. Right now, the coast is clear. The electricity supply, waters, everything that you're going to need in Jasper is stable, and they're ready to welcome you with open arms. Now, of course, conditions can change, in which case we'll keep you posted, and you're also going to want to keep an eye on their official social media accounts at Tourism Jasper. But this weekend, some really neat stuff coming up in Jasper National Park, and a great opportunity for you to get out there and get active. If you're looking for that combo of fun and active in the national parks, I want to let you know athletes have their pick of events coming up on June 3rd. So this is not this Saturday, but the Saturday after. You got some time to make your plan here when both the Gran, Fondo, and the Jasper Banff Relay are going to be happening. The Jasper Gran Fondo is a long-distance road cycling event. I mean, this is as good as it gets. Jasper's early season boutique Fondo is back. It started in 2014, so coming up, this is 9 years already. The Gran Fondo Jasper is Canada's only Fondo to take place in a national park. There's multiple distances to choose from. The 65K Piccolo Fondo, so fun to say, John, is the shortest, and then they've got the 190K, the Forte Fondo. That's the longest. What an amazing adventure that would be. You can go to jasper.travel/events to register for that, and then you'll find more fun in the weeks to come. And then, of course, if you'd prefer to run as opposed to cycle, then grab some of your speediest friends, and you're going to want to sign up for the Banff Jasper Relay Race. This is so much fun. It travels along, honestly, the most beautiful highway in the world. The scenic Icefields Parkway, 93, between Banff and Jasper. You and your team will be taking turns running that 260-kilometer long route with 15 different stages, splitting it up. You will not find a relay race in a more stunning setting than the Banff Jasper Relay Race. Again, you can find all details online at jasper.travel/events. And of course, we'll keep you posted on future adventure opportunities every Wednesday right here on Real Talk. It's MyJasper Memories, presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. What do you figure, pal? 190K cycle?
When you said that number, I was like, oh, I love our sponsors, but that's going to be a no from me, dog.
That's a no from me, dog. That sounds like a lot of work.
That's going to be a no from me,
I suspect the people that are participating in the Forte Fondo are people that have maybe done a little practicing. They've maybe conditioned their bodies to prepare themselves for that.
Yeah, going through the prep here, I was like, these people are in shape. Heart-wise, weight-wise, everything. So
yeah, no kidding.
But it's never too late to change, right? So
never too late to change. Oh, that's an interesting segue into this next segment, isn't it? Well, we wanted to touch on this. Of course, there are stories developing every single day here on Real Talk, and if you're following the Alberta election, we recognize we have audience members from outside Alberta, but this is the story. It's the political story in Canada right now with big implications. Every single day, we're going to be bringing you these insights, and we can't ignore this post on Facebook from, this is the Constituency Association. Okay, so there's 87 of these across the province, and in Lacombe-Pinoco, you remember this, their candidate, Jennifer Johnson, is kind of sort of not-ish the UCP candidate right now. I mean, she is, because she's on the ballot, and the ballot can't be changed. But you remember, and I'm not making light of this, this is people call it kind of the poopy cookie kind of story, but that's making it too cute. I mean, these were the horrific comments about trans students in particular, and everybody's heard the audio. If you missed it, you can catch it on our Thursday episode of last week and into Friday, UCP leader Danielle Smith said that this candidate, Jennifer Johnson, if she wins in Lacombe-Ponoka, she will not sit in the United Conservative Caucus. And then the next day, Smith didn't rule out a return to caucus. I mean, these are all ifs. She hasn't won the election yet, but if you're paying attention to the polling and history on how that riding votes, chances are she's still going to win, but that's why we vote. That's why we have elections. Smith says she wouldn't rule out a return to caucus. Well, the CA, the Constituency Association, yesterday on its page posting this, quote, "This Constituency Association Facebook page has understandably been inundated with questions from the involved citizens of the Lacombe-Ponoka constituency. In the last 2 days, people have been receiving automated calls from somebody that are suggesting that voting for the candidate, Jennifer Johnson, is somehow a wasted vote. Says the CA, these are absolute lies because the candidate is still a UCP member in good standing, and there is the probability of her entering the UCP caucus in the near future." That from the Constituency Association. So people are looking at this and saying, well, is this all bullshit? Is this all optics? Is this just a play by United Conservative Party leader Danielle Smith and her strategists to ensure that they can weather the storm of the controversy of the comments of, comparing children to feces, win that seat in what's going to be a tight election, and then hopefully welcome the candidate back to caucus? And of course, the answer is yes. It always has been. Danielle Smith had two options, though, and I tweeted about this last week. She had the option of ignoring this and standing by the candidate, essentially standing by the comments, like she did in 2012 with Alan Hunsberger, that preacher, the Lake of Fire. I remember it because I was the interviewer talking to Danielle Smith on a show now defunct called Breakfast Television. It was a Monday morning after the story had broken on the Sunday. This guy, a preacher, saying that gays were going to burn in a lake of fire. And I was the one asking Danielle Smith if she would condemn the comments. And she was the one telling me to my face that hers, the Wildrose Party, was not a party that would dictate one's religious views or convictions. She insisted that the comments were not made while he was a candidate for the Wildrose Party, but while he was a preacher. And ultimately, she and the Wildrose Party paid the price for that. So the choice that Danielle Smith had the day of the televised debate, this was last Thursday, you remember, was to stand by the candidate or to disavow the candidate and to say this candidate will not sit with us in caucus. That's what she said. That's the position she took. But did anybody really believe that this candidate would not at some point rejoin the caucus, rejoin the party, be welcomed back, most especially if the seat count is tight? If you ever believed that this was to be a permanent divorce, I would suggest you were in the minority. Now, the question is how long and what has to happen for members of the general public to find this palatable. Of course, the other point is that the general public doesn't have to find this palatable at all. All Danielle Smith has to do is win the election and have a mandate from voters to essentially do whatever she wants over the next 3 to 4 years. That's kind of how governments go. It's why some people, critics of the UCP right now, are so outraged that there aren't policy positions in the official UCP election platform around things like an Alberta pension, around things like an Alberta police force. Because, yeah, you can win a mandate as a politician to govern, but if you have plans but don't campaign on those plans, do you really have a mandate in particular to implement those initiatives? These are the types of questions that people need to ask as they're casting their own vote, as they're making their decision on who they're going to support. Not just what is the reality right now, not just what are candidates promising or not talking about right now, But what do the next 4 years likely look like under the leadership of either of these two parties and either of these two women, Danielle Smith or Rachel Notley? You can let us know how you're wrapping your mind around these stories, including this new development out of Lacombe, Ponoka. Maybe some of you are surprised. I would suggest that most of you probably aren't. And we're going to leave some time on Thursday and Friday's episodes, and especially on Election Day, Monday morning. We're going to let that show breathe. We're going to read your emails. We're going to get into the casual conversations that people are having about important subject matter as Albertans go to the polls. Of course, that's Monday, May 29th. These conversations happen because of sponsors that believe in the value of real talk, and that includes our friends at Friesen Brothers. You can find them in 16 different Alberta communities. It's barbecue season, and Friesen Brothers wants you to know that not only do they have their beautiful in-house barbecue sauces ready for you to check out, not only do they have their brand new salad dressings that everybody's buzzing about, but their garden centers are also wide open. The coolest part about this is that more than half of the offerings, more than half the plants, plus all the soil at the Friesen Brothers Garden Centers are grown or gathered right here in Alberta. That means that they're perfect for this climate in this part of the country. You can learn more about it at friesen.com. That's Freson, or go see them in person. 16 different stores, still family-owned. Friesen Brothers, Alberta grown, Alberta owned. Our friends at Eden Landscaping are hard at work. This is their busiest season bringing outdoor spaces to life, but they've still got some space before the summer's done to get your project drawn up and completed. That's all part of the full-service landscaping contract agreement. That's how they operate. You're not going to have to subcontract anything out when Mike and his team take a look at your vision, understand what it is your family's endeavoring to create, and then, well, they make it happen. If you're not satisfied, they're not leaving. That's why they've earned return business and referrals for well over 20 years. The custom landscape builder with more than 2 decades of on-the-ground experience, it's Eden Landscaping. You can find them online at landscapeedmonton.ca. Our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park want to invite you to stop in and check out the Summer Feature Blizzard Collection. It's officially out right now with some of the return favorites like the Cotton Candy Blizzard Treat. Of course, everybody loves that Choco-dipped Strawberry Blizzard Treat. But today I want to tell you about the Reese's Caramel Pretzel Blizzard Treat. If you ever wondered, can there be too much of a good thing in a DQ Blizzard? The answer is no. And you can pick one up today at the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. We're proud to partner with the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. John, they have confirmed they will have the Dilly Bar Shooters at the second annual Real Talk Golf Classic coming up on Thursday, June 22nd.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger!
The Dilly Bar Shooters from our friends at DQ. And finally, have you sent in your trash talk yet? You know you got it burning inside it. You've got it written out in your mind. Now all you got to do is send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Trash Talk presented every Friday by our friends at Local Environmental Services. Keep it local. If you're a decision maker in Edmonton and area, Whitecourt area, Regina and area, if you're looking to save money and increase the quality of service in garbage, recycling, water hauling, portable fences and toilets, you name it, Local Environmental Services does it. You can request a quote today at localenvironmental.ca. Coming up on Thursday's broadcast, we're looking forward to a different perspective on the Alberta election. What have these wildfires done to the conversations at the doors? And could they actually, in a way, improve the chances of the Alberta Greens? We're going to talk to Jordan Wilkie. He'll join us, the Green Party leader, plus former Cabinet Minister Doug Griffiths, from PC to endorsing the NDP. How did he get there? He'll tell us.